So let's go through what we need for this workshop. So you can see in my setup, I've just got a piece of scrap canvas, scrap linen canvas, taped up onto the board, but absolutely anything that you want to paint on should be fine. So long as it's white, could be a panel, it could be like oil paper, or even acrylic paper would probably be fine. Can be bits of canvas, or if you have a canvas, anything really. You want it to be at least, this is maybe about kind of 10 inches wide, something like that. It could be fairly small, but that's a reasonably comfortable size to work at. Larger than that is fine as well. So it's a fairly, the exercise, this particular workshop is a lot more about the principles that you learn to do with oil painting. So don't worry too much about what you're painting on. It's purely an exercise. So next to that, I've got my palette pinned up, so you guys will be able to kind of see my mixtures as I work. But that's just a standard palette that's just been attached to my easel. Then I've got my palette cups. We'll be using a bit of medium. I'll go through that in a moment. But that's my basic setup. In terms of tools, the medium that I'll be using is just some odorless mineral spirits. So generally, if you use mineral spirits or solvents, I recommend them to be as odorless as possible, just because they're less toxic. But you could also use oil for this. We just need something to make the paint spread more easily. And as this is an introduction to oil paint, I'll be talking a bit about mediums and sort of viscosity of paint. So how thick or how thin the paint is and how that affects how easy it is to apply the paint, which is definitely something that people have a little bit of trouble with. Next thing that we'll need is ideally some sort of rag or paper towel for cleaning. We want to keep our brushes very clean at certain points of the workshop. And you can either have lots of different brushes if you don't want to clean them, or I tend to just have a few brushes that I keep reasonably clean. And the brushes I'm going to be using are just a kind of array of small to medium, sort of fairly soft, flat brushes, but pretty much any brush will work okay for this workshop. You probably don't want just tiny little pointed brushes, but otherwise it's fairly versatile. But this is just to give you an idea of what I'm using. And as I say, it's useful to have 2 or 3 so that when you're swapping between brushes, you should always have a clean brush. But we will be cleaning quite a bit at certain points of the painting. And I'll talk about how you need to clean the brushes as you're working as well. So try to cover as much as possible in terms of all of the technical aspects. You're going to need some sort of pencil. So I've just got like a little mechanical pencil. Absolutely any kind of pencil or charcoal's fine. That's just initially to kind of map out where we're going to be painting today. And then I think finally, I think covered up pretty much everything, is the oil paints that we're using. And basically the palette that we're using is just 4 colors. So titanium white, and then 3 primaries, so a red, a yellow, and blue. The ones that I put on the materials list are just sort of a general selection of quite common yellows, reds, and blues, and they're also all Series 1 paints, which means they're cheaper than if you buy more expensive things like cadmiums or more expensive blues. So all of these are quite easy to obtain and quite cheap. So we've got titanium white. So I've just got a big old tube of titanium white that I'm using. And then I've got lemon yellow, but as I say, pretty much any reasonably bright yellow will work. So sometimes people have things called primary yellow, or any kind of cadmium yellow or cadmium yellow hue, anything like that will be fine. Just a yellow that's fairly bright. Then I've got ultramarine blue, which is a pretty standard blue. People will typically have this available in their palettes if they've already got oil paint. It's a common one to put into beginner's sets. And it's just a pretty solid general blue that's very commonly used. And finally, I've got Indian red, which is similar to things like Venetian red or red oxides. It's basically just sort of like an earthy red. You could use a cadmium red as well, would be totally fine. Pretty much any other kind of primary based red will work. Essentially, we just need 3 primary colors and white, because what we're looking at is how colors mix, and then how we sort of shift between different values and different hues and different saturations when we paint.